I am a huge fan of unusual performance cars. Now, last week I covered an unusual sports car called the Venturi, which is a French supercar that never got the recognition that it deserved. But what about just performance versions of normal cars that we got here in the UK? So, here are a few that come from all over the world and some that you probably didn't even know existed, so please enjoy. The Ford Mondeo was a very popular saloon car in the UK when it was around. In fact, everyone loved it, much like they loved the Ford saloons that came before it, like the Sierra and Cortina. However, this third generation never had a performance version. There was no Mondeo ST. However, in Australia, things were a bit different. They had the XR5 Turbo, which had the 5-cylinder turbocharged engine from the Ford Focus ST. Now that's pretty cool. So basically you get a Ford Focus ST dressed up to look like a normal family saloon. Moving to Japan, we have another car which encompasses both family practicality and boy racer performance. We have the Subaru Forester STI. So basically they took the regular Subaru Forester and donned it in Subaru Impreza blue and fitted it with the 2.5 litre turbocharged flat 4 engine from the Impreza WRX STI. So basically you have a rally car wrapped up in a family SUV body, which was 4-wheel drive and also had plenty of space for all of your family and a dog. You could also get it in a manual, and these are fast becoming very popular imports as they only exist in Japan. Moving on to one of the countries with the most fascinating automotive histories, that is South Africa. Now, BMW division of South Africa produced something remarkable. They took the regular E30 BMW and shoehorned in the 3.3 litre inline-6 from BMW 7 Series with around 200 horsepower to create the BMW 333i. This is one of my favourite BMWs ever. A rear-wheel drive 3.3 litre straight-six powered E30. This is basically the M3 that never existed. This is what the M3 should have been, in my opinion. In fact, they have the same power. So it's a pretty cool car, and I wish we got it in the UK. Another car I wish we got in the UK was this. I know it looks like a normal Ford Sierra aside from the funny looking bonnet vents. However, as you go round it still looks normal. Maybe it's an XR4 you might think. However, you go around to the back and you see that the badge says XR8. That's right, this has the 5 litre V8 from a Ford Mustang which was shoehorned into a Ford Sierra. Again, basically that's like a Mustang for the family. Imagine having this instead of an Escort Cosworth. I mean, the Sierra Cosworth is fantastic. Great car. But don't get me wrong, this would have been way cooler. The Elantra N is basically one of my favourite Hyundais that's ever been produced. The N division of Hyundai took off to a flying start, and in fact their hot hatches sold like hot cakes here in the UK. However, they produced the Elantra N for the US, which was their saloon that they were making at the time. There really isn't a demand for non-European saloons in the UK, so the Elantra probably wouldn't have been popular. However, the Elantra N probably could have made its mark, as it's a fast saloon that doesn't cost £1 million. It's much cheaper than any BMW, and at just £30,000, it's just about the fastest car that you could get new for the money. The Vauxhall VXR8 is one of Vauxhall's greatest hits, even though the Australians came up with the idea. Anyway, that car is pretty well known because it was £35,000, and for that money you got a 5.7 litre V8 with rear wheel drive and a 6-speed manual. However, for that kind of money, you would have also got a Mercedes with a V6, an Audi with a V6, and a BMW with a straight six. However, instead of that, the Australians came up with an estate car version, which had a much bigger boot. However, you still didn't get very good fuel mileage. The Daihatsu Copen was a smash hit when it was launched in the UK in the early 2000s. In fact, it soldiered on for a few years and it was quite successful. However, we never got to see its successor, which is this much more grown-up looking thing with canards and much more modern looking exterior, which looks a lot less cute. It was a pretty trendy car, and I think it would suit today's car market very well, as it's very cheap to run because it's only got a 660cc engine. You could get it with a 1.3 that had a little bit more power, but I don't know if that's available. You can confirm in the comments. It isn't rear-wheel drive, unfortunately. It is a front-wheel drive car, so it's much more manageable, and I think with younger buyers looking for sports cars, I reckon this could be a really cool choice if it was for sale here in the UK. Now the GR Corolla. The Corolla wasn't ever successful in the UK considering the competition from Europe, so there probably wouldn't have been much interest for the GR version. However, I still think it could make a pretty decent mark considering that the Honda Civic Type R is a pretty good car here in the UK. Everyone loves it. There are loads of them. So why didn't Toyota jump in and give it a rival? A manual 3-cylinder powered hot hatch. This is a really, really cool car that I absolutely love, and I wish it was for sale in the UK. Now for an old car. A car that's not been in production since the 80s, the Ferrari 208 Turbo. Yeah, that's right, this is the first ever turbocharged Ferrari, and it was only ever sold in Italy, where there was a huge tax on cars which had engines bigger than 2 litres. So a lot of performance car manufacturers had to think about smaller engines, and Ferrari was no different. They had a 2-litre V8 engines, Ferrari 308, which they called the 208, but they wanted to give it a bit more oomph, so they decided to bolt a turbo to it, which was pretty radical for the 1980s. This was the first turbocharged Ferrari, and I think that if it was sold here, I reckon it could have brought on a much more budget-friendly alternative to the 308. And last but not least, one of my favourite new cars for sale today, the Nissan 400Z, or just Z. This is a twin-turbo 3-litre successor to the 370Z, a beloved sports car by UK enthusiasts. This thing is brilliant. It still looks like a Z car, it's still rear-wheel drive and has 6-cylinder power up front. It's a pretty cool looking thing, and I have seen a few for sale in the UK, but unfortunately it's not sold here officially. I mean, the GR Supra sold well, why wouldn't this sell well? People love Z cars in the UK, even though a lot of them have rusted away or have been modified to the extreme. I reckon this could offer a fresh face to Nissan in the UK, and add a bit of spice to their lineup.